Well, I don't know about you, but there are times when I just simply sing words. Do you? And we've just been singing about God's amazing grace, and it really is amazing the fact that God says to you, you know what, I'm going to take care of you. You don't deserve it, but I'm going to take care of you anyway. We're going to start a series next week called I Deserve, and it's going to be on God's grace, to understand what it really is, because honestly, I don't think most of us get it. I don't think we understand how good it is to have this amazing relationship with God and to say, you know what, I am totally sold out to loving you, to following you, because you've done amazing things in my life. You'll want to be here for that series. When you came in, inside the program is a connection card that looks exactly like that. Sometime during our gathering today, if you could take just a moment and fill that out, we would greatly, greatly appreciate it. The word of the day is time. I want you to think about time for just a moment. 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week, 28, 30, or 31 days in a month, 365 days in a year. You can get a lot of stuff done. Here's the question. How are you really spending your time? You're spending your time on things that really are going to matter 5 months from now, 5 years from now, 500 years from now? Or is your life just sort of caught up in the, wow, I just got to get through this day? God's going to give you some time to spend time with Him. He's going to give you some time to impact the lives of other people. And it's so easy to just miss those things. It's so easy to have the day go by and you didn't really do anything of significant value. The highlight of your day should not be going to Walmart. Nothing against Walmart. The highlight of your day ought to be much bigger than that. God really wants you to use your time. So think about that today. The word of the day is time. I want to pray with you about that right now. Father, thank you that you do give us time. God, you give us time to reflect. You give us time to ponder, to think about who you are and what you've done in our lives. You've given us time this morning to gather together and to do that. You've given us time to worship you today. God, I pray that you would remind us of how awesome you are and what you want to do in our lives. God, we commit our time to you, not only this hour, but this week, this month, this year, this lifetime. Remind us that you can use the time you give us in a significant way. Help us to reflect upon that even today. Pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. Let's stand together and continue to sing. My Big Fat Mouth. Well, today is the last day in this series, My Big Fat Mouth. And you say, exactly how big and how fat is your mouth? The average mouth can hold 4¼ ounces of liquid. 4¼ ounces of liquid. So I do have a question for you. Here it is. Think about this. How much saliva does the average person produce in a day? How much saliva does the average person produce in a day? Now, just to give you a little bit of a parameter for this, I asked the question with the team that sets up, and somebody said 6 gallons. I will tell you that's high, okay? 6 gallons. 6 gallons of spit, that's a lot of spit. The average person produces 1.8 pints of saliva. That's what they produce. Almost 2 large bottles of Coke. That's what you're producing. Here's the thing. What else are you producing with your mouth? I'm going to give you a word. You know what it is? Pain. A lot of us, we produce pain in others because of the things that we say. That's why we're doing this series. That's why we talked about complaining. That's why we talked about critical criticism. That's why we talked about lying. Today, we talk about something that we tend to see in others but rarely see in ourselves. Today, we're going to talk about gossip. Now, I know that you might think, gossip seems like something that junior high, middle school girls do. I can tell you today that most of us, from time to time, get caught up in gossip. I want to address that issue with you this morning. If you would pull out the handout that we gave to you when you came in, I want to look at a passage of Scripture in the book of Proverbs. The book of Proverbs chapter 18 and verse 8. Proverbs chapter 18 and verse 8, written by Solomon, one of the kings of Israel. Here's what it says. The words of a gossip, the words of a person who is a gossip are like choice morsels. They go down to the inmost parts. They're like choice morsels. In other words, they're like something that you really want. When you came in, we gave you peanut M&Ms. Choice morsels. Let's be honest. If you open up a fun size, and I still haven't quite figured out why they're called a fun size, because it doesn't seem like it's as much fun to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 peanut M&Ms. If I want to have fun, I want the bag, man. I want the $1.25 version. 7. That's not a whole lot of fun. That's putting the bar pretty low. But here's the question. Now, unless you have a nut allergy, how many of these can you eat? You don't just eat 7, right? I mean, really, seriously, you don't eat 7. As a matter of fact, if you go to the movie theater and buy these, you're going to spend roughly $29 on peanut M&Ms because you need about 14,000 just to get through the movie. Once you've had one, you just don't stop. You just take another and another and another. It's a choice morsel. Now, look at that passage. Here's what it says. The words of a gossip are like choice morsels. In other words, they don't just say one thing that's gossip. They say another and another and another, and it becomes this massive habit pattern. Notice what the second part of the verse says. They go down to the inmost parts. In other words, words really do hurt people. Remember the little rhyme, sticks and stones can hurt my bones, but words will never what? Harm me. That's just totally wrong thinking, because words really do hurt people. I want to talk about that with you today because I want to challenge you to assess whether or not you really are gossiping. Someone said this, gossip travels around the world and back. Gossip travels around the world and back before truth can get out of bed and put its pants on. Gossip travels around the world and back before truth can get out of bed and put its pants on. In other words, it's always going to be so much easier to gossip. We're going to talk about what that looks like, but here's what happens. If I gossip to you, then you share with someone else. Now, sometimes I'll say something like this, hey, just want to share this with you, but Tom, don't tell anyone else. He won't, and that's exactly what happens. And then he goes home and he goes, Amy, you know what Ed told me? And he shares it with her. Now, this is not true, okay? Just so you know. And then Amy goes to work, and she shares it with someone else. And before you know it, 47 people know. It's called Whisper Down the Lane. Ever play that game? Whisper down the lane. It's time to play Whisper Down the Lane. We have our very own Vanna White down here. Holly is going to select.
I can't wait. I mean, I am really good at this because, like, every girl's sleepover ever, we played
exactly.
this game.
All right, okay.
And I kind of pre-selected this row, so I think you knew it was coming.
It's real simple. All Holly's going to do is she's going to tell Pam what the statement is. Pam, you're going to whisper it and whisper it and whisper it and whisper it. And by the time it gets over to Amy, we're going to see how close it is to the original statement. Now, just so you know, you only have 46 seconds to pull this off, okay? So give her the statement. Let's see what happens.
Whisper it just once. You get one shot. Just keep going on going. Okay.
All right, here we go. So, Amy, give us what you think the statement was.
A dog named Moses was chasing a squirrel through the forest.
That's close. A dog named Moses was chasing a squirrel through the forest.
Ooh, can I read it? Can I read it?
Yes, you
Okay.
can.
A dog named Moose
Close to Moses. You can see how you could mess that up.
Ran loose through the spruce forest chasing a goose.
Yeah, so it was a goose and a moose. That's exactly what happens. You see, that's what happens. We play Whisper Down the Lane all the time. Well, what happens if you whisper down the lane? Let's talk about Roman numeral number 1 in your notes. Here's what it says. It's easy to misunderstand what gossip really is. It's easy to misunderstand what gossip really is. Let me give you a couple examples. Number 1 in your notes. Sometimes gossip is disguised as a prayer request. Sometimes gossip is disguised as a prayer request. You go to work, and Jill comes up to you and she goes, "Hey, have you heard? Have you heard that Ian is spending a lot of time with Karen, the new girl? And I'll tell you something about the new girl. And it looks to me like they're working overtime, and I don't think we should pray for their marriage because, well, not their marriage, but the marriage of Bill or Ian, because there's too many people in the store for me to even keep track of. See how this all works? That's gossip. That's what it is. But just pray for them. Or watch the screen and see how 3 ladies decided they should pray for people. Well, it certainly is easy to gossip, and it's like, oh, it's just a prayer request. I'm just going to share this with you. Now, there are times you ought to share prayer requests, but make sure that you're going to share it with someone who's legitimately going to pray specifically for that issue. It's another qualification on what gossip is and isn't. Number 2 in your notes, sometimes we say, well, if it's true, what's the big deal? It's true, so what is the big deal? I've said this numerous times in this series. I've actually put it in the notes, given you a bullet point today. Here it is. Catch it really well. Very important. Everything that is said must be true, but not everything that is true must be said. That is a great statement. Everything that is said must be true, but not everything that is true must be said. You and I have got to decide, you know what, I will be a truth teller, but I'll also be wise in what I say, when I say it, and to whom I say it. We've got to be incredibly careful. Why is that true? Proverbs chapter 18, verse 21. Not in your notes, might want to jot it down. Proverbs chapter 18 and verse 21, here's what it says. The tongue has the power of life. We've talked about this. The tongue is the power of life and death. The tongue is the power of life and death. And then it says, and those who love it will eat its fruit. In other words, if you speak words of life to people, it will benefit them in a tremendous way. So take a moment right now and just reflect back over this past week, the words that you've said. Are you saying words that build up, or are some of the words that you're saying actually tearing people down? Because you can be a person of encouragement, or you can be a person of destruction. Now, I know that this is a church, and you can go, hey, well, in church people just don't gossip. Really? Because it seems to me that through the Old Testament and in the New Testament, you see people who do that very thing. As a matter of fact, the Apostle John, who wrote not only the Gospel of John, but 1 John, 2 John, and 3 John, in a book that most of us probably have not spent a lot of time in. 3 John, there's only one chapter, so if you're looking to read a quick and easy book, right there it is for you. 3 John, chapter 1 and verse 9, this is what it says. John says, I wrote to the church, but Diotrephes, who loves to be first. Well, there's a qualification for you. You're going, yes, this guy loves himself. He has a little bit self-consumed, who loves to be first, will not welcome us. So when I come, I will call attention to what he is doing. So what is he doing? Catch the next phrase. Spreading malicious nonsense about us. Spreading malicious nonsense about us. In other words, it is incredibly harmful. So the question is, who does gossip really hurt? It's number 2 in your notes. Roman numeral number 2 in your notes. Who does gossip hurt? The first person that it hurts. Gossip hurts the person who is spoken about. Gossip obviously hurts the person who is spoken about. Proverbs chapter 16 and verse 28. Here's what it says. A perverse person. You got to define that. What's a perverse person? A perverse person is someone who has a defiled heart. A perverse person stirs up conflict. Second portion of the verse says, and a gossip separates close friends. When you and I choose to gossip, the person who is spoken about is going to encounter some incredible difficulties. Conflict is going to come. You might even lose friendships over gossiping. The implications of gossip are seen in Proverbs chapter 11. Proverbs chapter 11 and verse 11, it says this, through the blessing of the upright, a city is exalted. In other words, a city, and in David's time, in Solomon's time, city has walls around it. The blessing is stirred up by the upright in the city. In other words, everybody benefits by being around righteous people. You know why? Because they do things that help others, and they speak words that build up other people. But he goes on to say this, but by the mouth of the wicked, the city is destroyed. By the mouth of the wicked, the city is destroyed. In other words, you and I have to be incredibly careful about what we say because we have the ability to hurt people. When you gossip, the person who is being gossiped about is hurt. But it doesn't stop there. Here's the second person that's hurt. Gossip also hurts the listener. Gossip also hurts the listener. Proverbs chapter 17 and verse 4 says this, a wicked person. Catch that phrase? A wicked person. Now think about that. How would you define a wicked person? A person that has some moral issues in their character, a person who's making poor choices, a person who's certainly not interested in following after God, a wicked person. I was going to define one of the things a wicked person does. Listen to this. A wicked person listens to deceitful lips, listens to lying lips, listens to gossip. Why does it hurt that person? Because as you listen to that, you will be tempted to share it yourself. So not only does the person who's being spoken about get harmed, but the person who listens gets harmed. Notice the bullet point in your notes. It's an important one. Catch it. Here's what it says. What you permit, you promote. What you permit, you promote. In other words, if you listen when people come and gossip to you, that's harmful. Don't do that. What you permit, you promote. Has anybody ever come and said something and you're thinking, oh man, I should not be listening to this. This is not good. I should step in here and say something, but I really don't know what to say. I'm going to help you in a moment and tell you what you can say. You get trapped and you're thinking, oh my word, I just want to shut this person up, but they just go on and on and on and on. And you think, wow, I don't want to hear this. Why? Because you know that's going to sink into your heart. It's going to influence how you view the person that's being spoken about. It also not only affects the person being spoken about, not only affects the listener, but another person that gets impacted, number 3, is gossip hurts the speaker. It hurts the speaker. Proverbs chapter 25 and verse 9. Listen to these words. Proverbs chapter 25 and verse 9. When arguing with your neighbor, don't betray another person's secret. Isn't that really what gossip is? You're really betraying another person. You're sharing something that's not appropriate. He goes on to say this, others may accuse you of gossip, and you will never regain your good reputation. You and I have got to be so careful about gossiping. We all know gossips, do we not? Do you know any? Anybody? You know some gossips? Yeah, you do. You know any gossip that you go up to and you go, you know what, I just want to tell you, I've been watching you, and I just love the way you carry yourself. I love the way you speak to people and just sort of lay them out and cut them open and fillet them from time to time. As a matter of fact, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. Nobody in this room has ever said that. Nobody wants to be around somebody who's a gossip. Notice the bullet point, here it is. Talking badly about someone else when they're not around says more about you than the person you're talking about. Talking badly about someone else when they're not around says more about you than the person you are talking about. Your words reveal your heart. Your words reveal your heart. Okay, so the question ought to be, all right, so what if I do have a concern for someone, and I really do want someone to join me in figuring out what we could do. I want someone to pray about that. What about that? It takes you rather nicely to number 4 in your notes. Here it is. If the person you're sharing the information with is not part of the problem or part of the solution, it might just be gossip. If the person you're sharing the information with is not part of the problem or part of the solution, it might be gossip. In other words, if you're going to share something with someone because you do have a genuine concern, make sure that you're sharing it with the right motivation. You're sharing it with someone you think can help you, partner with you to help them address the issue. You're not just telling them to slam someone. That's what gossip is really all about. You see, when I gossip about somebody else, what I'm really doing is I'm pushing them down, and hopefully I can step on top of them and make myself look much better than I really am. We've got to make sure that when we share something with someone else that we see as an issue in their life, that we do it with the right motivation. So gossip harms other people. We would all agree with that, would we not? It harms the one speaking the gossip. It harms the one being spoken about, and it harms the one listening to gossip. If that's the case, what do we do about it? What's the solution? What is the simple solution to dealing with gossip? I want to give it to you this morning. I want to give you 2 simple walkaways that I guarantee you, if you follow these 2 simple things, you will not find yourself caught up in gossip time after time after time after time. Here it is, Roman numeral number 3, how to control gossip. Roman numeral number 3, how to control gossip. First step is this, real simple. Ready for it? Here it is. Number 1, guard your ears. Guard your ears. Guard your ears. In an article in a psychology magazine, they gave one simple statement that they found could stop gossip. One simple statement that they found could stop gossip. I put it in your notes. Here it is. You just simply ask the question, why are you telling me this? Why are you telling me this? Why are you telling me this? Now, for some of you, you're going, well, that sounds a little snippy. That sounds a little sassy. I don't really want to be sassy. That just sounds like, I'm not saying go, so, and you put your hands on your hips, get ready, and you lean in, and you go, so why are you telling me that? That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, just ask the question. Whoa, why are you telling me that? The reason psychologists figured out that tends to stop a person in their tracks is it forces them to go back into the recesses of their mind and honestly say, why am I doing that? Because let's be honest, most of us don't really think a lot about what we're saying. Have you noticed this? And then we say things like this, which is actually probably a lie a lot of times. Oh, I didn't mean that. Well, you probably did. Now, every once in a while, you and I are going to say something that just sort of comes out, and you're going, wow, I didn't mean to say that. That was not it. But the things that we say really do come from where? Our hearts. What comes out of your mouth comes out of your heart. Now, you might say, well, okay, that's a little tough to say. Why are you telling me this? Is there another statement, a softer statement that I could use? And there is. Let me give it to you. Have you spoken, here it is, bullet point, have you spoken with, fill in the blank, Bill, Harry, Sue, have you spoken with them about this? Have you spoken with them about this? So you could say something like this. Wow, Marty, that's really sad. Have you spoken to Bill about that? And you know what's going to happen? He's going to take some time to think about that, and if he's honest, 98% of the time, he's going to have to say, no, I really haven't. See, it's always going to be easier to talk about somebody than to be willing to dive into the pool and say, I'm going to help them because they're drowning in this particular area. Remember that everything we say needs to be truthful, but not everything that's true needs to be what? Said. We have got to come up with a way to address that issue. You say, okay, so where did you get that? The first statement was out of a psychological magazine. Where'd you get the second statement? Jesus actually said that. Matthew chapter 18, verse 15. Matthew chapter 18, verse 15, he said this: if your brother or sister sins, if there is something going on in their life, go and point out their fault. Now, do it gently. Go and point out their fault, just between the two of you. Notice that phrase? Just between the two of you. I've been a Christ follower since 1973. And words tend to flow out of my mouth rather easily. And I have found myself in situations where it's like, man, I shouldn't say that. So how do you really address a person like this? What should I really say when I'm going to the person who has the issue? It's not in your notes. Let me give it to you. I think it's very important to come up with a phrase that says something like this. You know, I'm wondering, as I've watched you, I wonder if this is an issue. I wonder if this is an issue. I'm not slamming. I'm just wondering if this is an issue. If it is, I would love to help you in that area. If you can't get that far, then shut up. That make sense? I'm wondering if this is an issue. If it is, I would love to try to help you. Because if you take that approach, it doesn't sound snippy. It doesn't sound sassy. It's not a put down. It says, you know what? I love you enough to come to you and point out something that I think might be true but might not be true. Because maybe, just maybe, I misread the situation. Have you ever found yourself doing that? Every one of us have, haven't we? So we've got to be very careful in how we address the issue. But Jesus went on to say, if they listen to you, you have won them over. Did you notice what it said? It said, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. Don't make it, don't grandstand, don't share it with everybody and their brother. Don't say, you know what, I'm going to be going and I'm going to be confronting them about this, so I'm going to get 18 people to pray that I'm going to go. And that don't do that. Don't do that. The only people that ought to be involved in the issue are people that are part of the problem or part of the solution. That's an incredibly important statement. You and I have got to guard our ears. We've got to figure out how to stop that. Why is that important? Because Proverbs chapter 20 and verse 19 says this: a gossip betrays confidence, so avoid anyone who talks too much. What's he saying? He's saying, you know what? There might be people in your world and my world who gossip all the time. What's he saying? Avoid them. Avoid them. They're poisonous. They will harm you. They will harm others. You will find yourself getting roped into listening. And you're going, whoa, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. You and I have got to guard our ears. Make sense? Second portion is you've got to close your mouth. Guard your ears, close your mouth. Proverbs chapter 21 and verse 23 says this: those who guard their mouths and their tongues keep themselves from calamity. They keep themselves from calamity. Guard your mouth. So how do you really know what to say and what not to say? Maybe the question is, would I want someone sharing similar information about me if I weren't in the room? Would I want someone sharing similar information about me if I weren't in the room? It's a great way to exercise in your mind to think through, this is okay to say, this is not okay to say. Or said another way, will this benefit the person because I'm going to say it? Will this lift them up? Will it help them take a step in the right direction? Will it help them? You and I have got to follow what's called the golden rule, found in the book of Matthew, also in Luke chapter 6. In Luke chapter 6, verse 31, here's what it says: do to others as you would have them do to you. The golden rule. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If the shoe were on the other foot, would you want that person coming to you and saying what you're going to go and tell them? Remember, you're only going to go talk to people who are part of the problem, part of the solution. You're not just spreading information, you're looking for help. You're looking for help. Proverbs chapter 17 and verse 9 says this, whoever would foster love covers over an offense. What does that mean? It means that sometimes, you just got to let stuff slide off your back. You got to let it go. You got to let it go. Because if not, you're going to be confronting people every other hour. You got to let it go. You got to choose, is it big enough to deal with? And if it is big enough to deal with it, you never go to them saying, you know what, I got to tell you, you just really have ticked me off, and I just got to lay you out and let you have it because I'm going to feel great about this. We can never do that. If you can't go to talk to a person for their benefit, you don't go. Real important statement. If you can't go and talk to a person for their benefit, you don't go. I'd stay home and pray. That would be much better. It'd be much better to be talking to Jesus about that than to be talking to them. And don't go when you're upset and angry, because that's not going to go well. You know that, right? Those of us that have been married, you understand. There are times that you shut up. Not a good time. Now is not the time. Read the cards. Figure it out. Is this a good time or not a good time? Am I ready to say something positive to them so that it comes across in a loving way and not in a slamming way? That's incredibly, incredibly important. It says this, whoever repeats the matter separates close friends. Gossip separates people and harms people. At the end of the day, what you and I need to do, we need to guard our ears, close our mouths, and then we have to realize this. This is the caveat. The only way, really, you're going to be able to guard your ears and close your mouth if you make sure that your heart is right. It's a heart issue. It is not a hearing issue. It is not a verbal issue. It's a heart issue. Here's what Jesus said, Matthew chapter 15, verse 18. Matthew chapter 15 and verse 18. But the things that come out of a person's mouth come from the heart, and these defile them. Whatever comes out of your mouth comes from your heart, and those things defile you and others, I would add. And then he says this in verse 19, for out of the heart comes evil thoughts. Out of the heart comes evil thoughts. He goes on to list them. Murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, gossip, and slander. Somebody said, well, what is the difference between gossip and slander? Slander is when you know you are saying something that absolutely is not true. It's a lie. It's slanderous. Most of us would not struggle nearly as much with that as with gossip. Because we say things like, well, it's true. I mean, it's true. Remember, everything that needs to be said needs to be truthful, but not everything that's true needs to be said. Catch that principle. It's a heart issue. It's a heart issue. So you and I have got to get to the point of saying, God, I need you to remind me what my heart really looks like. You see, just maybe what you listen to and what you speak is a great measuring stick for what your heart's like. It's a barometer. So let me ask you today, how you doing with truth-telling? How you doing with gossiping? Doesn't mean you never address an issue, but when you address an issue, you do it by, in essence, saying, you know what, I want to help you. If you don't feel I can help them, then pray that God sends someone else to them who can do that. You and I have got to do what the Apostle Paul said when he wrote to the Thessalonians. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 11, he said this, encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing. Encourage one another, build each other up. I want you to think about this. Go back to your middle school, high school days. You go back to elementary school time if you'd like to. Think about this. Who was your favorite teacher? My guess is it was someone who spoke encouraging words, someone who saw good stuff in you, someone who built you up. You and I have friends. Some of our friends, we would choose to be around them a lot more than other friends. Is that true? Because some friends that we're around, every time you're with them, you feel a little bit slammed or they're slamming someone else. And you can be sure of this. If when you're with your friend and they're slamming someone else, who do you think they're talking about when they're with somebody else? They're now talking about you. Because it's a heart issue. So if you are on the receiving end of gossip, you need to close your ears. If you're on the giving end of gossip, you've got to guard your mouth. How are you going to do that? Have a change of heart. You and I have got to say, God, you know what? Gossip is like a tasty morsel to me. Like, it's actually enticing. So, God, I'm going to ask that you change my heart. Change my desires. Change my passions. Help me to be revolted when I hear that. Help me to be revolted even when I think I'm going to say, because God, it's not right. Would you be willing to allow God to change your words, change what you listen to, because he changes your heart? It's a key. Here's the simple truth this morning. The simple truth says this: gossip destroys lives. Gossip destroys lives. But when you guard your heart, your mouth and ears will follow. Gossip destroys lives, but when you guard your heart, your mouth and ears will follow. It's time to do some work. Time for you and for me to say, God, I got to assess, is that an issue that I have? Now, you might be in the room and maybe you never gossip. Maybe you never listen to gossip. But for most of us, it's something we really need to work on. Will you allow God today to work on your heart? Pray with me about that, would you? Father, I really do thank you that you understand everything about us, and you still choose to love us. Father, some of us, if we're really honest, we gossiped a lot. Some of us, if we're really honest, we've listened to gossip. Would you take a moment and just ask God to help you to see yourself as he sees you? Would you take that moment and say, God, what Ed's been talking about this morning, I've been guilty of, to one degree or another. That's called confession. Would you just admit that to God if that's true? And then would you take the moment to thank him that he forgives you for that? And now would you take a few moments and ask God to work in your heart, to put protective walls around your heart, to purify your heart, to help you to see others as he sees them. And finally, would you take a moment and ask God to remind you that if you're going to share something with someone, you need to be willing to step in there and be part of the solution. Would you make that commitment today? God, if I'm going to speak into someone's life, I can't just give words. I need to be willing to give time. If they're willing to work on it, to partner with them. Would you make that commitment? Because if you do, you'll be an encourager. God's calling all of us, even today, to encourage others. He wants to use you. Today's the day. Use the time. Well, Father, I really do thank you that you do have a plan for us. And that despite the fact that at times we do things that are incredibly foolish, I'm just grateful that you still love us. That you're a gracious God. And for that today, we're just awestruck with who you are. Thank you for what you're doing in our lives. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Let's take a